Namaste to all. I am AJoshi. I work for Bird Conservation Nepal as a Vulture Conservation Program Manager. On the behalf of Department of National Park and Wildlife Conservation, National Trust for Nature Conservation and Bird Conservation Nepal, all the partners of SAVE from Nepal, I am presenting here the update about the vulture conservation in Nepal. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. During the breeding season, this season, vulture nesting colonies were monitored actually in the 3 times a year. A total of 584 nests of 6 different species of vultures were monitored. This year, we used the Survey 123 app, which was helped from the RSPB, which is very practical and time saving, and even the analyzes the data through the app. Out of which, for 584 nests, 400 of them were successful in hatching and growing up their chick, whereas 184 of the nest failed. During this nest monitoring, we did in the 16 districts of Nepal. Furthermore, 594 nests of white-rum vultures were reported. Only 33 of them were found to be successful, making 67.27% as a breeding success. Next slide, please. Since the release, a total of 21 white-rum vultures, including 13 captives, have been participated in the breeding behavior, and we have seen them in breeding with the wild and also pairing with themselves. 7 captive vultures, released vultures, actively participated in the breeding, with 2 of them successfully fleeced their youngs as chicks in the wild. Yeah, next slide, please. After this 2 years of COVID lockdown, finally the 16th Vulture Highway Transit Survey 2022 was conducted as part of Nepal's yearly vulture census. 505 individuals of 6 different vulture species were counted. During this survey, 182 white-rum vulture individuals were counted in the Tara area, whereas 86 were counted in Nepal mid-hills, which is significantly higher than the previous surveys, as this also shows the effectiveness of the vulture safe zone. Yeah, next slide, please. Another key achievement this year was the trapping and satellite tagging of 20 wild white-rum vultures. And 7 adults and 3 sub-adults were tagged in March, and 6 adults and sub-adults were tagged in October. And this year, we used the aluminum leg rings, which is much bigger, and we use the red color and have the alphanumeric inscribed with letter N. And there is a number on 3 sides, which helps us in easy visualization. Next slide, please. And we have continued this hygiene maintenance around this release site, where we have 20 captive white-rum vultures were also released in 2 different events on March and on November. Yeah, next slide, please. In 6 separate release events since 2017, total 119 white-rum vultures, 59 captive and 60 wild, with telemetry tracks have been released into the wild, with ongoing regular monitoring and ground truthing is going on. Next slide, please. The very important information has been provided by this tracking the movements of these tagged wild birds that have been tagged. We have been tracking and keeping eye on every single tagged vultures on a regular basis with the required ground truthings on the field. The newly established this Gandaki Lumbini Vulture Safe Zone declared last year by SAVE is where mostly the vultures have been traveling, and they frequently crossing the border into the northern India to forage, and they return back to the vulture safe zone area. A tagged vulture that is recently traveled to 850 kilometers south to the Madhya Pradesh, India, and which is now back to the west of Nepal at Suklafata National Park. And also initially one of the vultures that has traveled 1100 kilometer west up to India-Pakistan border. And these kinds of information has been given by the satellite tag is very important. Yeah, next slide, please. And similarly, we have been monitoring the movement of the satellite tags of captive vultures. Next slide. Yeah, vultures and we found that they are performing well enough. As you can see here in the map, the yellow one on the map, which has traveled more than 300 kilometers from the release site and paired with the wild and successfully has the chick, and frequently foraging in the northern India. They have been coming to and fro from the Indian border, but still the most of the released captive birds are remaining local within the release site. Yeah, all the vultures, captive vultures in the VC Kasara were in good condition during our regular health checkup, and the last 10 captive white-rump vultures were transferred to the release aviary in the Kaosuti release site. And there is no longer a captive vultures in VC Kasara area. The last 10 captive now in release aviary will be released in March 2023, as we are going to close this VC because of the wild population has been increasing and wild environment has been good for the vultures around Nepal. Next slide, please. Undercover and the general pharmacy survey was conducted as part of our routine survey. Total 641 NSIDs were recorded. Out of them, 590 were found to be meloxicam, followed by, we found 37 nemucilide and 6 ketoprofen, which is around 93% of the drugs available in the market were safe to the vultures, while around 7% of the drugs are the vulture unsafe. And this availability of these toxic drugs in the area is still a threat to the vultures. Yeah, next slide, please. Furthermore, the veterinary personnel in the survey were informed about the NSID, also the toxic and non-toxic and safe drugs, and the vulture conservation issues have been briefed during our survey. And the new leaflet regarding the toxic NSIDs was also published as an awareness material. Next slide, please. Also, we have done the veterinary practitioner and technician as a training on vulture conservation and capacity building training to local farmers on monitoring the use of these veterinary dogs were conducted through the conservation leadership program. And we have taught the veterinary, we have given the veterinarians and the farmers to maintain the data of what they have been using the drugs so that it could be easy to track the drugs they have been using for the cattle. Next slide, please. And we have been doing this conservation awareness campaigns which was successfully conducted, primarily focusing on the surrounding of vulture nesting area, foraging area, and the frequently movement site in more than 15 districts of Nepal. That has directly benefited to 2,100 individuals, and the conservation message was disseminated through different various mediums to the large audience. Next slide, please. 20 vultures were rescued as sick or injured, while 41 vultures have been reported dead during this fiscal year 21-22. 4 of them were released back into the wild with successful treatment, while 4 others are being still treating. And the Himalayan griffons were the most found death with 32 individuals across the country. Next slide, please. Among these death vultures, electrocution is seen as the most threatening to the vultures during the month of, mostly in the December to February, which is considered as a peak altitudinal migration season for them. Next slide, please. Also, from the data from 2010 to 2022, it is seen that 43 incidents of electrocution were reported with the fatalities or incidents of 110 individuals of 7 species of vultures. Looking at this scenario, the trend of incident is in increasing rate and likely to increase in the future. Next slide, please. And for the way forward, for the long term of management of vulture safe zone, continue the release of remaining white-rump vultures with satellite tag monitoring, and planning to satellite tag and monitor in slender-bill vulture also. Prevent the use of vulture toxic drug and ban the toxic drug in Nepal. Nest monitoring, population survey, farmers survey will be continued, and try to expand the vulture safe zone, in the other parts of Nepal, and continues the awareness and capacity building and strengthening the transboundary collaboration on vulture safe zone. And the fundraising is also the issue, and partnership with others will be maintained. Next slide, please. And we have encountered this very unusual record, the American black vulture that is feeding in the Jatayu restaurant. And we saw this vulture in just 2 days feeding regularly, and this has not been cited now, and which is certainly not expected to occur in this part of the Asia. Most probably escaped from the zoo or the private collector who brought in this region. Next slide, please. Yeah, we are very grateful to Saving Asia's vulture from extinction and SAVE, Royal Society for the Protection of Bird, RSPB, for the long-term support in vulture conservation in Nepal. Thanks to all the concerned stakeholders and local community who are supporting in the vulture conservation work in Nepal. And I hope that most people from this meeting will be present in the SAVE in-person meeting in March. Welcome to all in Nepal. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Deep.